class. Today, let's learn the processing techniques of black tea. Black tea is the type of tea that undergoes the greatest physical and chemical changes during processing. It is known as a fully fermented tea. Its basic characteristics include red soup and red leaves. Although black tea can fall into two categories, strip tea and scattered tea, but their processing steps are basically the same. That is, withering, rolling or cutting, and fermenting, and lastly, drying. The main functions and objectives of each step are as follows. 1. Withering. Withering is the first step in the initial processing of black tea, also a fundamental step in forming the quality of black tea. It has not only a physical dehydration effect, but also chemical changes in the contents. The purpose of withering is to cause the following two changes in fresh leaves. First of all, evaporate some moisture, reduce the tension of tea cells, soften leaves and stems, and increase the toughness of sprouts and leaves, to make them easy to roll into strips. The second is a series of chemical changes in the contents of tea shoots caused by the loss of water, which lays the foundation for material changes in the formation of specific qualities of black tea color, aroma, and taste. 2. Withering methods and techniques. Withering methods include indoor natural withering, sunlight withering, trowel withering, machine withering, and various forms of heated withering. Currently, trowel withering is commonly used. Understanding the withering process is closely related to the quality of tea making and subsequent processes. If the tea leaves are not withered enough, the tension in fresh leaf cells will not be released. The tea leaves will be hard and brittle. The sprouts will easily break during rolling. The tea juice will become thin and prone to loss. The fermentation will be uneven and difficult to control. When processed into raw tea, the strips will be short and scattered, with many broken bits. Weak aroma and a bitter taste. The soup will be muddy, and the leaf bottoms will be vari-colored with a hint of green. If overly withered, the buds will scorch. The leaf texture will harden. Tea juice will not be produced during rolling. The leaves will become hard to roll tightly. The fermentation will be uneven. The raw tea will be loose and mostly strips. The color will be gray and dull. The hair will not reveal. The aroma will be weak, and the soup will contain dark, vari-colored soup. So, withering should be moderate. Neither excessive nor insufficient is beneficial to the quality of raw tea. Rolling, cutting. Rolling cutting is an important process for shaping the appearance and inner quality of black tea. Kung Fu black tea requires a simple, aesthetically pleasing appearance and a strong internal flavor, which depends on the degree of leaf tightness and damage to cellular tissue. The purpose of rolling. By rolling, the leaves undergo the following three changes. First of all, leaf cell tissue is damaged, causing tea juice to overflow, and the enzymatic oxidation of polyphenolic compounds is accelerated, laying the foundation for forming the unique endoplasmic substance of black tea. Secondly, the leaves are rolled into tight strips. Their size is reduced, and a beautiful appearance is created. Thirdly, the tea juice overflows and accumulates on the surface of the leaf strips, so that the leaves are easily soluble in water during brewing. The concentration of tea soup is increased, and a glossy appearance is formed. Fermentation. Fermentation is a key process for forming the color, aroma, and flavor characteristics of black tea. Proper fermentation can produce more theaflavins and thearubicins and form more flavor and aroma substances. The method of fermentation is usually to place the rolled leaves in a fermentation frame or fermentation car and enter the fermentation chamber for fermentation. Fermentation requires setting the appropriate temperature, humidity, and oxygen content required to meet the enzymatic oxidative polymerization reaction of tea polyphenols. Temperature. It has a significant impact on fermentation quality, including day temperature and night temperature. The day temperature directly affects the night temperature. During the fermentation process, polyphenolic compounds oxidate and release heat, which increases the leaf temperature. The variation pattern of leaf temperature is from low to high and then to low. It is advisable to maintain the leaf temperature of fermentation at 30 degrees Celsius and the air temperature between 24 degrees Celsius and 25 degrees Celsius. The air temperature and leaf temperature should be appropriate. If the leaf temperature is too high or exceeds 40 degrees Celsius, the fermentation changes will be severe, which will cause the aroma of raw tea to weaken, the taste to lighten, and the color to darken, which will seriously damage quality. So during the hot season, cooling measures should be taken. The leaves should be spread thinly to facilitate heat dissipation and cooling. When the temperature is too low, the fermentation time will increase and the internal conversion will not fully develop. Therefore, when the leaf temperature is too low, the leaf layer should be thickened to preserve the heat, and other warming measures should be taken when necessary. Humidity. Humidity is also an undeniable condition for fermentation. Practice has shown that maintaining a high humidity over 90% is beneficial for improving the activity of polyphenol oxidase and the formation and accumulation of theaflavins. Otherwise, when leaves contain low moisture content and a low humidity during fermentation, its excessive accumulation of theobromine will cause its soup and leaf bottoms to darken and a light taste. Therefore, fermentation requires a relative humidity of 95%, which means humidification measures such as spray or watering must be taken. Ventilation and oxygen supply. Fermentation requires a large amount of oxygen consumption. For the production of every 1 kilogram of black tea, oxygen consumption reaches 4 to 5 liters during fermentation. Under anaerobic conditions, fermentation cannot proceed normally. Meanwhile, fermentation also releases carbon dioxide from the beginning of rolling to the end of fermentation. Every 100 kilograms of leaves can release 30 liters of carbon dioxide. The thickness of leaves. The thickness of spread leaves affects ventilation and leaf temperature. When the leaves are spread too thickly, the ventilation will be poor. The leaf temperature will increase rapidly. The heat will not be easily reduced. And when the leaves are spread too thinly, it won't be easy to preserve the heat. Drying. Drying is the last process that determines the quality of fresh leaf processing. Drying is generally carried out in 2 stages. The first stage is called the initial fire, and the second stage is called the full fire. Spreading and airing should be carried out between initial fire and full fire. The purpose of drying. The following 3 goals are achieved through drying. Firstly, rapidly inactivate enzyme activity using a high temperature. Stop enzymatic oxidation and stabilize the quality of fermentation. Secondly, evaporate moisture. Tighten tea strips, fix the shape and keep them dry, which is beneficial for maintaining quality. Thirdly, get rid of most low boiling grassy odor and excite and retain aromatic substances with high boiling points, thus obtaining the unique sweet aroma of black tea. During the drying process, thermochemical reactions dominate. Bake at a high temperature over the initial fire can reduce changes that are detrimental to quality, while baking over full fire at a low temperature can promote the forming of aroma. For example, the prominent honey aroma of Qihong tea is closely related to slow baking at a temperature of 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. Today, we have learned in detail the processing technology of black tea, which are withering, rolling, or cutting, and then fermentation and drying. Please think after class. What are the ways to roll and cut scattered black tea? And what are its advantages and disadvantages?